This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to ER Vet on Pet Life Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Justine Lee, and I'm a board-certified emergency critical care specialist and toxicologist. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about fall hazards. In other words, now that autumn is approaching, what do you need to know to keep your dog and cat healthy? We'll be right back after these messages.
Do you own a pet care business? Do you need help training and retaining your staff? Fetch Find Monthly Pro is the perfect platform for you. Fetch Find Monthly Pro is a monthly subscription with unlimited users, no contracts, and fresh content every week. With increased employee engagement, higher customer satisfaction, and lower risk and liability, Fetch Find Monthly Pro pays for itself. And you can completely customize the training materials based on your company's needs. Head over to www.fetchfind.com to learn more and subscribe today. That's FETCHFIND.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to ER Vet on Pet Life Radio. Super excited to talk about fall dangers because I want you to be able to protect your dog and cat. Now, I will fully admit I hate daylight savings time because I lose one more hour of daylight. And with that, I wanted to warn owners about the dangers that can happen with the decreased hours of daylight. Now, if you're walking your dog, ideally, you should be walking your dog 30 minutes a day. You have to be aware that reduced light is going to make it more challenging for drivers to be able to see your dog or you while you're walking them. Unfortunately, in the emergency room, I oftentimes will see dogs or cats getting hit by a car or sustaining some type of trauma during these late fall hours. So again, make sure to keep your pet safe. Unfortunately, by the time you get home from work, it's often dark out. One little hint I have is I actually have a little blinking light. So it's a red light that flashes and attaches on my dog's collar. And that way cars can see both of us. I also will put reflective tape on my jacket just to protect my dog. My dog also has a reflective collar. So again, simple ways of keeping our pets safe as we get less daylight. Another fall poison I wanted to talk about is chocolate. Now, we talked about this with Dr. Tina Weismer from the ASPCA Animal Poison Control around Halloween. So go back and check out that episode on ER Vet. But when in doubt, you want to make sure to keep chocolate and that candy stash out of reach. Don't get me wrong, 1 or 2 Kit Kats or Baby Roots aren't going to be an issue if your dog eats it. 1 chocolate chip cookie is not a big deal. But remember, the darker and the more bitter the chocolate, the more dangerous it is to your dog. So if you're baking more in the fall with semi-sweet chocolate or baker's chocolate, just keep in mind that those 2 types of chocolate contain huge amounts of theobromine, which is a chemical in chocolate that's poisonous. Signs of chocolate poisoning include vomiting or diarrhea. And if they get into a higher dose, it can actually have side effects on the heart. And that's going to include a racing heart rate, a really high blood pressure, or even an abnormal heart rhythm. With really high doses, we can actually see neurologic signs like tremors or seizures. So again, don't worry about 1 or 2 Hershey's Kisses or 1 or 2 small pieces of chocolate. But again, it's the darker and the more bitter chocolate that we worry about. So during the fall, keep that Halloween stash out of reach. The second poison we can often see more are mouse and rat poison. We also did 1 dedicated episode on ER Vet on just rodenticides. So make sure to go back and check that out. Now with mouse or rat poison, I know a lot of people put that out in the fall. My husband just found a mouse in our house the other day. And so as it gets colder, mice start seeking shelter in warm locations. In other words, your house. So I always tell people, We as pet owners and animal lovers ideally should not use any type of poison because not only can this poison our pets unintentionally, but it actually contaminates the environment. It can actually cause death to birds of prey or mountain lions, depending on where you live. So the safest thing you can do is to adopt another cat or to use snap traps, which are much more humane. Now, depending what type of mouse and rat poison you have in your house, it can cause different types of clinical signs. One type is called an anticoagulant rodenticide, and that one can cause internal bleeding. Thankfully, that particular mouse and rat poison actually has an antidote, vitamin K1, but this one is becoming less and less common due to regulations by the Environmental Protection Agency. The second most common type of mouse and rat poison I see is actually one called cholecalciferol or vitamin D. And while vitamins typically sound healthy, this one is actually really dangerous. As little as 1 ounce or 1 block can poison a big dog. And this one, unfortunately, causes an abnormal elevation in your body's calcium, and that can actually cause kidney failure. So you definitely don't want to have cholecalciferol or vitamin D3 in your house. The third type of rat poison is one called zinc phosphide. This one you want to care about because this one's poisonous to you too if you actually smell the phosphine gas. The fourth type is one that's called bromethalin, and this one causes seizures. So again, check out our previous episode, or better yet, just don't bring mouse and rat poison into your house this fall. Another common fall poison that I see, compost or mulch piles. While I'm a huge proponent of being eco-friendly and recycling or composting, you want to make sure that if you are composting, that you're keeping it in a well-secured, fenced-off area. And the reason why is because we can actually see dogs or even wildlife poisoned when they get into compost. There's a lot of rotting vegetables in there. It's really attractive to dogs. It actually contains a poison called tremorgenic mycotoxins, which is due to the mold in the compost. Signs of compost poisoning include drooling, vomiting, agitation, walking drunk, or even tremors or seizures. So again, the safest way you can avoid that problem is by just making sure to fence off the compost pile. Now, we'll take a short break and we'll be back right after these messages.
Get the stinky dog away from me.
Bad breath and bad gas. Petey stopped eating. All his hair fell out.
Itching, licking, missing fur.
At least $5,000 in vet bill. Creams, antibiotics, sprays.
No results.
Everything we tried failed except the Dinovite. DINOVITE.com.
If you want the dog to be healthy, you got to feed it something healthy.
The omega-3 fatty acids. Flaxseed, zinc, alfalfa. The digestive enzymes that are cooked out of regular dog food.
Dinovite is nutrition.
The shedding is stopped and the itching is stopped.
Her coat is not soft, it's silky, it's
healthy and shiny and glossy.
She's got life, she's got energy.
Tons of energy, no more bad smell.
Dinovite's the bomb.
Dinovite is the best thing that's ever happened to my dogs, besides me, of course.
859-428-1000.
859-428-1000.
Dinovite for life.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Pet Life Radio and ER Vet. What we've been talking about so far in this episode are fall or autumn poisons that are dangerous to your dog and cat. We've talked about things like chocolate, mouse and rat poison, and even compost or mulch piles. Two other poisons that I wanted to warn you about are mushrooms and mothballs. Now, mushrooms generally are pretty benign, but unless you're a mycologist, in other words, someone who can accurately identify mushrooms, we have to be really careful with mushrooms because they're really hard to identify for the pet owner or the layperson. One of the biggest things we worry about with mushrooms is the really deadly type called Amanita, and this is actually poisonous to humans too. Regardless of where you live in North America or in the world, Amanita mushrooms and different types of poisonous mushrooms can be found worldwide. We recently had a whole family that was poisoned by mushrooms. They went mushroom picking. They didn't realize the mushrooms are poisonous, and it actually caused severe liver failure in that whole family. So, when in doubt, you never want to let your dog eat mushrooms. Thankfully, cats are pretty fastidious. They're really picky. They don't usually eat them. But again, this can be really dangerous to dogs. Now, certain types of mushrooms like amanita can be deadly because they cause liver failure. And so typically we'll see signs of lethargy, not eating, vomiting, or diarrhea. Then these signs can actually progress to liver failure, where we'll see an elevation in the liver enzymes. Their skin may turn jaundiced. They may have black, tarry stool. So when in doubt, if you see any mushrooms growing in your yard this fall, do your dog a favor and just pick them up and make sure to check your backyard frequently so your dog doesn't accidentally get into them. There's a few other different types of mushrooms too. Some can just cause some gastrointestinal signs like vomiting or diarrhea. Other types can actually cause neurologic signs like tremoring or even seizures. So again, when in doubt, keep all mushrooms out of reach. I will tell you, if your dog gets into a mushroom, it's always safest to call your veterinarian or your ER vet because we want to decontaminate your dog as soon as possible. In this situation with mushroom ingestion, I don't actually even recommend calling an animal poison control center because they can't identify the mushroom for you. They can help your veterinarian with treatment, however. So you always want to call if your vet isn't aware of how to treat mushroom poisoning. Thankfully, the prognosis is pretty good if we can get that mushroom out immediately by, quote, pumping the stomach and giving a dose of charcoal to bind the poison. A lot of times as a veterinarian, I'll actually put dogs on a liver protectant called SAM-E for about 2 weeks while I monitor their blood work to make sure they don't have any side effects from these mushrooms. The last fall poison I wanted to talk about, mothballs. Well, just like how mice and rats come into the house to stay warm, so do moths. Now, mothballs look benign, but they're actually quite dangerous, even to kids. So you always want to put them in an area that's out of reach. They oftentimes contain chemicals called naphthalene. And while they oftentimes smell bad, unfortunately, dogs don't care about the smell, or even kids, and they'll oftentimes eat them. Signs of mothball poisoning in dogs and cats include gastrointestinal signs, so drooling, vomiting, diarrhea, or a really painful abdomen, but it can actually progress to lethargy and tremors also. Most importantly, it can actually destroy the red blood cells and result in anemia. And very rarely, it can cause liver failure. So if you use mothballs, please make sure to keep them out of reach, keep them locked in the closet, and make sure that closet door is closed. There's also a couple of plants that we worry about, like autumn crocus. This can actually be quite poisonous. And so if you do have autumn crocus growing up in your yard in the fall, make sure to have your dog on a leash so they don't get into this. When in doubt, help keep your dog and your cat safe this fall by keeping these fall poisons out of reach. So remember, mouse and rat poison, chocolate, compost piles, mushrooms, and mothballs. When in doubt, contact your vet, your ER vet, or ASPCA Animal Poison Control Center for life-saving advice if you think your pet was poisoned. Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. Find me at drjustinelee.com, on Facebook at Dr. Justine Lee, or email me your pet questions at drjustine@petliferadio.com. With that, we're out of time, and we'd like to thank our producer, Mark Winter, for making the show possible. See you at the next episode.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.